Throughout history, sport has been a major force in bringing people together by bridging cultural differences and transcending international barriers. We'll talk with a former Olympian and current chairman of Athletes United for Peace, a nonprofit organization committed to promoting peace, education, and friendship. Let's take note with Phil Shinnick, a 1963 Olympic long jump champion who applies principles of mind, body, and sport to healthcare. Phil Shinnick is also a master acupuncturist and director of the Research Institute of Global Physiology, Behavior, and Treatment in New York City. Thanks so much for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Tell us a little bit about the Athletes United for Peace. This is under the umbrella of the United Nations.
Yes, in 1976 I tried to get China in the Olympics, and we waged a major campaign to normalize relations, and it happened in 1980. But a week after it happened, Carter boycotted the 1980 Olympics. So all of a sudden, we were all working for the world to come together in the 60s and 70s, and it started to split apart. So we decided that the governments were not, they were part of the problem. So Olympic athletes, Igor Taravanishin, the world record holder in the long jump, whose record I broke, who's the national coach of the Soviet Union, different people from Cuba, from China, from the United States, founded this organization, Athletes United for Peace. These were gold medalists, women, men from all over the world, and we started to actually sponsor exchange programs between national teams, women's volleyball teams, basketball teams. We did maybe 100 exchanges, major exchanges, with no one involved, no government involved. And then we did this, and then the world started to come together now. So now what we've done is we've refocused into health and peace, and we're part of the United Nations. We're affiliated with the Department of Public Information. Athletes United for Peace is part of a committee of the International Olympic Committee and UNESCO to build a culture of peace. And how we're defining a culture of peace now is violence against the body, you know, dangerous drugs, the direction that sport has taken in modern science, which is anabolic steroid, high performance things. And we're trying to make culture and sport a part of a person's life for their whole life, not just for college or for, you know, for a high performance when they're 22, but for their whole life. And so we have all sorts of programs all over the world, in Africa particularly, and in California is a big part of what we do.
I want to pick up on something you said. You talked about reliance on science has led to a perversion in the culture, the sports culture. We want shortcuts. Tell us a little bit about what you're promoting and just how well it's being received.
Well, at the highest level, what I've been advocating for 20 years has actually happened. The United States Olympic Committee is now doing testing. The National Football League, the Baseball League in the last 6 months is doing this. This has been a 20-year struggle. So now the leadership is seeing this is not the direction we want our kids to go in. The public does not appreciate seeing robots, you know, taking these steroids and becoming artificial men, you know, or even women taking steroids. That there has to be a better way. And so what I'm trying to do is showing the better way that people can help themselves with very inexpensive things, and to create more of a rich culture that is relied upon a person's personality to help them develop themselves as a human being.
But it's not just diet and hard training. Tell us about the things that you've embraced that can help an athlete perform at peak performance.
Well, it's interesting because athletes have a tendency to train very hard. And really, I've never talked about this because it's part of my life, but you know, I used to train so hard that sometimes I would get deathly ill. I mean, I would get migraines, I would throw up, I'd get flus and stuff, but I never missed a workout. And I realized that athletes push themselves so hard that they actually start to fall apart. And then later in a couple days they start to come together, and then they surge and they get stronger. But in that process of disintegration, particularly for young kids who go out and they're just developing, you know, they got to study at night, they got to deal with their brothers and sisters. And so there are things in these traditional methods that are very good, that you can take all this fragmented energy that you induce yourself and pull it together so that you can sleep at night, because kids need to sleep. Like, for example, your shoulder, you can't sleep because you're blocking your artery to your brain, and so you get tired a lot.
Because of a break in my shoulder.
Right, a break in your shoulder. So these things kind of bring our energy together and coordinate us and let us get through the period until our body starts to redevelop. But also in training, you can only train so much, and there's actually psychological barriers that you have to go through. And so we have to develop things that get our mind and our body and our emotions together to integrate them, to resolve our fears and anxieties, because that's, as human beings, we all have that. And in sports, it brings it out worse. You know, the little kid who misses a field goal in competition because he gets fearful and loses coordination. Well, there's things that you can do to teach these kids to, you know, to be able to perform under pressure and have a good experience. Yeah.
So to start, instead of maybe with jumping jacks, maybe to start with a breathing exercise would be a wise thing for a coach to be doing.
Well, you know, I just accepted the cross-country coach of a middle school. I mean, I am so busy, and I thought to myself, Phil, this is, you know, put up or shut up. And so now I'm coaching a cross-country team, and I have them out there doing yoga exercises. I'm teaching them the gung fu moves like this, because, you know, if these kids can get their rib cages to unlock, because they got so much anxiety reaching pre-puberty, and they have so many pressures on them, if you get them to take a good breath, then what happens is their performance goes, because if with your body tense, you can't, you know, everything runs against each other. It's like too much resistance in the body, and these kinds of things actually help development.
It's interesting because my son's playing 9th grade football, and lots of the kids are much bigger than he is, and there's talk in the locker room about creatine, and it's not an anabolic steroid, of course, but, you know, as a parent, I'm thinking, I don't want my son taking creatine, and I hear other football programs who are encouraging their boys, not this one, but others, where they're saying that should be part of the regimen.
Well, the problem is that you take this and then you take something else, and the combinations can come up and bite you, you know, so you can have unanticipated consequences in these things. And the other thing is you start to rely upon, you start to believe it's a creatine rather than it's something else. But I wanted to show you something right now. So in Gung Fu and Qigong, it's like this, but watch this. This is more of a Gung Fu move that kids could learn. See, but see, that's what football does. You have to have that quick move. And in Gung Fu and these ancient things, you're actually, they're slow, and there's fast. See, it's hard to scare you, but you can see there's tremendous capabilities, because you can actually, like your little boy, he's 120, but if he learns exploding, you know, how to do the breath and explode, he could knock over a guy 250 pounds. I had my son weighed 115, and he played linebacker on a team, and he was, you know, tackling guys 170. But I taught him. He learned wushu when he was a boy. So just before you hit, you explode, and you can do amazing things. So these are kind of some of the things that could work for football, you know, taking Gung Fu, these quick motions, you know, explosive motions.
Now, you are busy working with the New York Ballet, with athletes at the world-class level. You've taken on, you said, this cross-country skiing team. You yourself spend a lot of time doing yoga, qigong, gung fu, all kinds of things. What is it that motivates you, that keeps you pressing forward? What is it what's the driving force behind Phil Shinnick?
Making use of my life on Earth. And also, in doing these things, there's an internal voice that said to me, Phil, you want to be enlightened, you want to do something with your life, learn medicine. So I'm kind of, there's a voice that sort of leads me to this, but mostly this is immensely pleasurable. I mean, I love to swim in the morning. It creates tremendous anxiety, and then I do yoga to get over my anxiety, and I'm reinventing my body and my soul. I'm 60 years old, and I'm doing things that kids do in college. I'm lifting weights, like I'm doing the kind of workouts I did in my 20s. Plus, I have a 2-year-old. So
it helps to have that energy.
Well, I'm thinking, well, let's see now. If I'm 60 and I'm going to be 75 when he's in high, you know, starting the end of high school. So I'm thinking, well, I'm just going to have to reinvent my life. I'm going to push the boundaries way up, so that from 60 to 80, those are going to be my most active years. Rather than going downhill, I'm going to go uphill. And so that's really my motivation.
What is it about sport, getting back to the Athletes United for Peace, what is it about sport that allows people to bridge international barriers and to do so much that they can't in other avenues?
Well, it's always been this way. I'm a writer, and one of the articles I wrote many years ago, I had a picture of a soccer player in 3000 BC. So sport has always been a part of bringing people together, and it's been a peace factor. I mean, look what we did in Athletes United for Peace. Athletes who had hero status of different societies, we'd come together. We have access to media. There's a tremendous good can come from all this. Athletes United for Peace, some of the people who helped us, Robin Williams, Joe Montana. So we had top athletes, and they immediately have access to communities, and so we figured, well, it's the perfect historical avenue. Why shouldn't modern society use it as it's always been used?
I want to go back to you're the director of the Research Institute of Global Physiology, and I've been puzzled. What do you mean by global? You
know how I was talking about bringing the energy together? Well, you can take particular blood samples of this and that, and that's what creatine and all these is. You know, you look at this and it's the micro level. Well, in human beings, when you bring the mind and body together, there has to be some measurement that's global, that you can measure what happens to the human being when they get it all together in all aspects, their emotions, their mind, and their body. What are those? EEGs, you know, EKGs, taking pictures of the hot and cold of a body, the thermal things like this. These are anything that measures larger things, that indicates an integration of the whole person. That's our science, and that's not a science that's been pursued.
We have just a couple of seconds remaining, but for someone out there who has been inspired by your energy.
And I'm sorry to scare you with a gung fu move.
And your mission, what advice would you give them to get started in this?
Well, you know, we do have a revolution. Yoga is everywhere. It's starting in. Wu Mi may be a part of the Olympics. I think that this is the future, and I think once a person tunes their head, that they're interested, they'll see that it's available out there.
All right. On that note, we're out of time. Thanks so much for spending time with us.
Sorry.
Our guest has been Phil Shinnick, who is a former U.S. Olympian and director of the Research Institute of Global Physiology. For Take Note, I'm Patty Satalia.
A copy of the program you've just seen can be purchased through Penn State Media Sales at wpsx.psu.edu or by calling 800-770-2111.